because I want him to know that we are the roots that nourish the earth, and we're still here. He is not alone. His people are not alone.
Welcome to Unblocked. This series of podcasts is part of the Florida International University Commons for Justice, Race, Risk, and Resilience Mellon Grant Project, and on this podcast, we aim to discuss disaster exposures, vulnerabilities, and resilience from an Indigenous perspective. Hi, I'm Mitzi Uehara Carter, and I'm the director of the Global Indigenous Forum at Florida International University here in Miami. This episode is a conversation between two Indigenous leaders in their respective communities. They're both seeking common ways to discuss the threat of encroachment in their homelands and all the environmental damages that come with it. They will address Indigenous frameworks of healing rather than restoring, and why Indigenous concepts of resiliency must be taken seriously when designing solutions. Let me first explain the first guest, Arassari Pataxó. He's a phenomenal man. He's a leader, teacher, and a spokesperson of the Pataxó People from the Barra Velha Territory in the state of Bahia, Brazil. He defines himself as a warrior who fights for respect and for the rights of Indigenous peoples in Brazil. He coordinates the pedagogical project Indigenous Day is Every Day, and through his vision and leadership, he strives to open the world's eyes to the importance of keeping Indigenous peoples on their land, showing how they respect and live with it. The Pataxós are the 9th most populous Indigenous people in Brazil, with more than 23,000 individuals divided into many villages located in 3 different states. He has a degree in law from the Estácio de Sá University in Rio de Janeiro. So just a few hours before this podcast recording, we were really fortunate at FIU, at our university, to receive Arassari Pataxó as a guest lecturer. He gave a very powerful talk on Indigenous knowledge, on the genealogy of Brazil, from an Indigenous perspective, and the living culture of the Pataxó. He urged us to shake off complacency and to be more conscious of the dire situation they are facing, which is mainly increasing encroachment and environmental threats from outsiders who refuse to live in harmony with the land and others. At that talk, several of our Global Indigenous Forum board members and friends blessed and welcomed him with several customary exchanges of gifts in their respective Indigenous ways. One of those people was Betty Osceola. She's a member of the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida. She's in the Panther Clan, and she's an internationally recognized environmental advocate, educator, and defender of her homelands, the Florida Everglades. If you haven't been to the Everglades, you definitely should. It's an incredible ecosystem. It's home to 39 endangered species, including the Florida panther and the American crocodile. She's been a staunch supporter of the FIU, the Florida International University community as well. Arassari is dressed in his full Pataxó regalia. He's wearing a beautiful feather headdress made of bright scarlet macaw feathers. It's stunning. And they sit erect on his head like a crown. His chest is bare. He's got an intricately beaded necklace, and he's barefoot. If you want to see what he looks like, you can go to our podcast page at commonsforjustice.edu. As he walked across campus to this recording room, students stopped to gawk and stare. Some asked who he was. He's striking. Betty is wearing her green, orange, and yellow Miccosukee patchwork dress. It's striking. It's got black ribbons winding around it. It's adorned with handmade geometric figures sewn into the design. They tell a story. She's got a heavily beaded necklace adorning her neck. She's very regal. So they are both sitting in front of the mics in this little room. It's a bit awkward. It takes a minute for them to warm up because of the setting. And you'll hear this conversation between the two really kind of search for ways to connect to their stories and to translate that culturally for an audience that may not naturally see nature as kin. And when the recording ends, What you won't hear is a very emotional connection between the two. Is full of mutual respect, of concern, and love. So you are hearing just a small taste of this conversation. Dr. Simone Athaiji is serving as a translator between them. She's a former associate professor of environmental anthropology in my department, in the Global Sociocultural Studies department at FIU. She's conducted extensive research in the Amazon and indigenous issues, and she's now a researcher with the World Resources Institute.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Simone Athaiji, and today is my pleasure to facilitate a dialogue between two indigenous persons. And today we have the pleasure to welcome Betty Osceola and Arassari Pataxó. Betty is going to be asking some questions to Arassari. They are going to have a conversation, and I will be the translator. So with that, I want to pass the floor to Betty so she can get started in this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here today. And also thank you for allowing me to ask you these questions and giving me space to have this conversation with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. He spoke in his own language, Pachohan, and he said he's very happy to be here and to be sharing this moment with his indigenous sister from Miami, Florida.
Earlier, you spoke to a group of students in the community, and I heard very similar issues that you have with your people that we have here in Miami and the surrounding areas. And I was interested in to hear again some of the issues that your tribe is facing that is important to your people.
One of the main problems they are facing today, they have actually faced since the 1500s with the arrival and invasion of the Europeans in the land, which is exactly the usurpation of their lands and the stealing of their lands and of their rights to the land. And now they face the same issues through issues some like mining or miners, land grabbers, and people that keep invading and usurpating their lands that continues until nowadays.
For me, of the Miccosukee, some of the problems that we see and when we speak about the similar issues of the loss of lands, here in Florida, we have the Everglades where we live, where we need to look for food and water. We can't do that anymore because the water is contaminated. We cannot find the animals like we used to. So when we speak to the public and the government officials that we need to do better, we find that they don't listen to us. And we also find, just like in history, they didn't consider us as human beings. Even today, it's the same. Also, there's the people, the mentality that they have to make those decisions for us. Is it that way in his country?
Lá no Brasil tem uma certa peculiaridade. For them to face these issues of prejudice and lack of hearing what indigenous peoples have to say and disrespect for indigenous voices, what they do is that they organize themselves. They organize in the indigenous movement. For example, next week they're having the movement which is called the Free Land Campsite at Acampamento Terra Livre in Brasília, where they have many indigenous peoples from different tribes that get together in this campsite. They come from many regions of Brazil. And they get together as a coalition and a mobilization to then summarize what are the main problems, the main issues, and their main claims, the main demands they had. And through that coalition and union, they then have a stronger voice to go and negotiate and talk to the authorities and other persons that make the decisions.
here in the United States, different tribes outside of Florida, we do get together and we do the similar. So we have more numbers of people to make a bigger voice. But how can we help his people in Brazil, not just Brazil, but all the indigenous people around Mother Earth? How can other people help spread the message?
É muito importante.
The indigenous peoples need to have a stronger voice in a world scale. They need to act more collectively in the world at the world level. For example, because all indigenous peoples are persecuted, people want the richness that are in their territories because all the richness are in their territories, all that is left. So he also mentioned, Betty, the importance of the mobilization and engagement of the international community, such as higher level institutions such as the United Nations and the organization, the ILO, the International Labor Organization, and others.
Ela tem que estar do nosso lado.
As an indigenous person, how we see the world and the balance, I understand. And earlier today, when he spoke in his presentation, he said his words so eloquently as to the knowledge of the elders of what they see is the going on in the world and humanity. What message can he share with everyone to understand the understanding that we have is what is wrong? Because he mentioned, and my people, our elders say the same thing, that there is a sickness in the world, like a virus, which is hurting the earth from being healthy. So how can we help heal? In his words, of his elders, his people, how can all of us collectively, as the children of our Creator and of Mother Earth, how can we help her heal?
Nossos velhos dizem que nós temos que começar a olhar o comportamento da
In fact,
humanidade na
like you
Terra
said,
e perceber
mainly
que esse
this
comportamento
philosophy
está sendo
of
maligno
that is what's brought
para a
and
mãe
is dominant
natureza.
today
E
by the white man,
analisar
and this
e
behavior is really
observar os
harming
grandes
Mother Earth.
acontecimentos, como
And he gave
catástrofes,
many examples of
pandemias,
disasters, pandemics, flooding that are happening right now more often,
isso é uma lição que a
and
mãe
which
natureza
they are a
está
lesson
pedindo
showing that
socorro.
the Mother Nature is sick and Mother Nature is asking for help. So, and then I asked how to cure Mother Nature, your question. And he said, it's a way of like, we have to transform our consciousness. We need to look at nature as our mother, not like a private property. Because land belongs to humanity. Land doesn't really belong to anyone. So the main one way to really change is to change that view and to change the perspective and the way we relate to Mother Earth as our mother and not as our property.
Então, o primeiro passo é mudar as consciências e a forma de lidar com a Mãe Terra.
I'd like to have him now maybe ask you a couple of questions, to turn to him now, and then you can maybe answer his questions.
Nossos velhos dizem que o homem branco ele fala muito e não cumpre o que ele fala.
He said that their elderly say that white men talk too much, but do not follow up on what they say. There's a lot of talking. And so instead of asking a lot of questions, he wanted to bring a message in his heart and ask you to share a message of comfort that he can take in his heart.
Então eu só queria ouvir de você uma palavra de conforto para eu levar para meu povo.
You know, our elders say that the world we know today is not the world we know tomorrow, but the world of our ancestors. And we can look at it as doom, or we can look at it as hope. Because when I think of the world of my ancestors, it was a world in harmony with nature and abundance of clean water. And our stories tell us that the earth, Mother Earth, will heal. And that the indigenous people coming together and being who we were meant to be, that awakening that I see happening, is going to help heal this world. Because I want him to know that we are the roots that nourish the earth, and we're still here. He is not alone. His people are not alone.
So he is very touched, very happy for this message that he's going to bring with him, because he feels that, and he wants to say that you are not alone. You are together, and he will bring this message with him. You know that there will be a point that the white man will recognize that we are the fertilizer for the land, and you are the truthful stewards and guardians of the territory of the land. And he's very happy also to know that you're also fighting. So that's the idea that you're not together, because you're also fighting to cure and to save this planet. I thank you everyone for listening, and we'll continue the conversation. And I want to thank Arassari for coming from so far and to be with us today. Thank all his village and his people for the work they are doing, the protecting the land. And I also want to thank and acknowledge Betty Osceola for the work the Miccosukee tribe is doing here, protecting and living and keeping all this ecosystem alive. Thanks to all, and also thanks for the Global Indigenous Forum at Florida International University for supporting this podcast. Good afternoon. Bye-bye.
And that's our show. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the Commons for Justice and to listen to our other episodes, go to commonsforjustice.fiu.edu. If you'd like to learn more about the Global Indigenous Forum or more about this podcast, Unblocked, please follow us on Instagram at FIU_GIF or go to our website, indigenous.fiu.edu. This episode was produced by me, Mitzi Uehara Carter. The audio engineer for the show was Gabriel Marchisio Jr. The audio and post-production editing was done by Sebastian Rocha Alvarez. Associate producer and audio editing was Diane Benitez. Thank you to the Mellon Foundation's Just Future Initiatives for their support on this podcast. Many thanks to Inma Cortes and Beatriz P de Carvalho and Estela Nickerson for arranging the visit of Arassari Pataxó to our campus.